Okay, everyone, we'll go ahead and get started. In the interest of time, just a few housekeeping items. As I said before, I'm Karen Scazzina. I'm the director of the ETSU Child and Family Health Institute and a pediatrician at ETSU. Thanks for joining us today for our collaborative speaker series. Everyone's invited to introduce themselves via the chat. I did want to let everyone know that we will be recording the hour and then later posting the video from this presentation to the Child and Family Health Institute website. So if you have colleagues or even trainees who were not able to join today, you can always share the video with them. Feel free to ask questions or enter comments in the chat at any time. And we do like to make this as interactive as possible, even though we're still doing this series in a webinar format. Jessie, we are thrilled that you are here today as our speaker. She's going to be talking about Be Smart for Kids, which is a program for gun safety and in injury and violence prevention. Jessie has been a volunteer with Moms Demand Action for the past 3 years. She advocates for common sense gun safety measures to prevent gun violence and make our community safer. She asked us to share with you also that she's a mom of 2, the proud wife of a veteran, a responsible gun owner, and a gun violence survivor. So as a pediatrician, I know how challenging it can sometimes be to talk about gun safety with families, because there's lots of varied views and viewpoints about guns and gun safety. So I'm really looking forward to this talk. We also currently have a grant from the Tennessee Department of Health aimed at maternal mortality and pregnancy-related mortality prevention. And so one of the things Jessie is going to touch on is the role of guns in terms of intimate partner and domestic violence. And I will say that we, when we talk about safety plans with families, that gun safety is definitely part of that conversation. So thank you so much, Jessie, and I'll hand things over to you.
Great, thank you. I appreciate it. Okay, let me, let's see if I can share the screen. Here we go. There we go. Okay. Okay. Bear with me, you all. I'm sorry. Okay. I think that we're there. Okay. Okay. Can you all see my screen? I know that's what everyone says nowadays. Okay, great. Thank you all so much for letting us do this, or letting me do this with you all. Today we are going to be talking about Be Smart. It's a program developed by Moms Demand Action for gun sense in America, and it's to bring together parents and all adults concerned about children, guns, and safety. So as Karen said, my name's Jessie. I am a mom of 2. I have, if you're wondering, I'm holding one right now to keep her. She's like a ticking time bomb. Hopefully she won't scream during the presentation. But and again, my husband and I are both gun owners. We're responsible gun owners. We follow all the steps in this acronym that I'm going to be talking to you about. He is a veteran, and he actually has a job that is around people that carry firearms. So our family is very familiar with the subject. And I'm a gun violence survivor. So the reason I bring that up is at the end of the presentation, I do want to let anyone else know resources that our organization has for people that do have experienced gun violence in their life. So moving on, let's see, there we go. Okay, in the US, firearms are, and this presentation, just want to caveat it, it was from May of 2020. So it is almost a year old. There is a slight chance some of these statistics have changed, but I would guess probably not. But we do have cited sources for all of the information you're going to see from these slides today. In the US, firearms are the second leading cause of death for children and the first leading cause of death for Black children. As the slide shows, nearly 1,600 children under the age of 18 are killed with guns in the US every year. That's an average of about 4 children every day. When children in America are killed with guns, the majority of those deaths, 52%, are homicides. More than 800 children per year. That's a lot. Additionally, more than 600 children die by firearm suicide each year, and nearly 100 are unintentionally shot and killed. We know that approximately 4.6 million children in the US live in a household with at least one unloaded and unlocked gun, or I'm sorry, one loaded, unlocked gun. While school shootings and mass shootings typically make the national headlines, the reality is that children under the age of 13, gun homicides most frequently occur in the home. And one study showed that nearly 90% of unintentional shooting deaths and injuries among children under the age of 15 occur in the home as well. What's more, we know that an incident of gunfire on school grounds, up to 80% of shooters under the age of 18 obtained the guns they used from their home or the home of relatives and friends. I know that this is an emotional issue, and we may come from different walks of life. Many of you may be parents, some are gun owners, and some are not. You may have had personal experiences with guns, or some of you may have even been impacted by gun violence. We believe the most gun owners want to be responsible gun owners. So we're here today to talk about what all of us, gun owners and non-gun owners alike, can do to make sure children don't have unsupervised access to guns. So for now, let's leave politics to the side and agree on just these 3 things. We want all kids to grow up happy and healthy. We each have the right to make responsible decisions about how to protect our homes, families, and communities, including whether or not to have a gun in our home. And if we can prevent even just one child gun death or injury, it's our responsibility to do so. We're not here to talk about laws or policies, so let's just kind of set that aside. I want to take a few minutes to talk specifically about the consequences of unsecured guns and what that looks like. On this slide, you'll see just a few headlines from stories from across the country, although we know there are many incidents that go unreported. And I mean, I'll just add with the news today, I mean, we even have local state incidents that have happened very recently. So this is always, of course, ever changing, but these are just some highlighted things that had happened in the past. Some of you may remember from the news, the first story at the top left, in January of 2018, there was a school shooting in Kentucky at Marshall County High School. More than a dozen students were shot and wounded. 2 of them, Bailey Holt and Preston Cope, were killed. The 16-year-old shooter had gained access to his stepfather's unsecured pistol from his bedroom. The next tragedy took place on May of 2018. A 4-year-old boy from Virginia unintentionally shot his 2-year-old brother, Tyson, after accessing an unsecured gun that was kept in a high upper cabinet. The next headline on the bottom left illustrates that when kids are looking to carry guns out of fear, easy access to guns can help facilitate the cycle of violence. Like 17-year-old Zeke of Jackson, Mississippi, who told the Jackson Free Press that some young people in his community carry guns out of fear of being robbed or shot and believe that having a gun will allow them to defend themselves. Let me also point out our final story. It's about 13-year-old Mikey from Brewster, New York. Mikey was a friendly, popular 8th grader. He was an expert bowler, an avid athlete, and he loved video games. In January 2013, Mikey came home from school and took one of his father's unlocked and loaded guns and shot himself. His family knew Mikey to be a happy kid, and they don't believe he planned to die that day, but with easy access to a loaded gun, Mikey made an impulsive decision that tragically became a fatal one. All 4 of these stories show the fallout of when a young person gets their hands on an unsecured gun. No story is quite the same, but all are tragic and all are preventable. So it's important to remember that even if you are practicing secure storage, and if you don't have a gun in your home, you can't be sure about other homes. You can't be sure about how responsible other people are being. And that's where our Be Smart program becomes extremely helpful. So what can we do? And here's what we can learn, how we can learn to be smart. So let's start with S, secure your guns in homes and vehicles. 13 million households with children contain at least one gun. And the majority of children in gun-owning households know where the gun is stored. We already know that in incidents of gunfire in school grounds, the majority of shooters under the age of 18 obtain the guns from their home or the homes of a relative or friend. Just like the tragedy we spoke about earlier that unfolded at Marshall County High School in Kentucky. So what do I mean by securing guns? Guns should be stored, locked, and unloaded with ammunition stored separately. Hiding a gun is not securing a gun. And we know that can lead to tragedy, just like when we talked about the 4-year-old Virginia boy who unintentionally shot his 2-year-old brother after accessing an unsecured gun that was stored in an upper cabinet. And remember Zeke from Mississippi, who spoke of the complicated safety reasons that push some teens to want a gun? Keep in mind that kids may feel a variety of emotions around guns, from curiosity to fascination to fear. As adults, it is our responsibility to prevent easy access to guns. Research also finds that the secure storage is associated with a decreased risk of firearm suicide and unintentional firearm injury among children. One study showed that the households that locked both firearms and ammunition had a 78% lower risk of self-inflicted firearm injuries among children and teenagers, and an 85% lower risk of unintentional firearm injuries. Some commonly used secure storage practices include a cable lock, a lockbox, a firearm safe, as well as storing firearms unloaded and ammunition stored separately. Unsecured guns also contribute to the staggering number of guns stolen each year. This has become an especially big problem in Tennessee. An estimated 380,000 guns are stolen from private gun owners every year, and gun owners were 3 times more likely to have a gun stolen if they carried a gun in the last month. Researchers also suggested that nearly 1/4 of stolen guns are taken from cars. So storing a gun in a glove compartment and underneath a car seat is not considered secure storage. And we have a lot of handouts and information if you all need more handouts or would like more handouts about this detailed information. I'll be happy to pass that along. So moving on to M. M stands for model responsible behavior. So every law-abiding adult that has the right to decide whether or not to have a gun in the home, that's fine, but you can't rely on a curious kid not to find a gun. As we saw on the slide before, one study showed that majority of children are aware of where the parents store their guns, and that more than 1/3 report handling their parents' guns, many doing so without the knowledge of their parents. And nearly 1/4 of the parents did not know that their children had handled the gun in the house. It is always, always an adult's responsibility to prevent unauthorized access to guns and not a curious child's responsibility to avoid guns. Talk to your kids about gun safety, but remember that's a precaution, not a guarantee. One study found that young children who go through a week-long gun safety training are just as likely as children with no training to approach or play with a handgun when they find one. Modeling responsible behavior means that smart adults make sure that kids don't even have the opportunity to access the gun. That said, you cannot control your environment that your child is in all the time, so you should teach them, of course, not to touch a gun if they come across one, real or pretend, and give them the tools to get out of the dangerous situation and to alert an adult. As an adult, it's your responsibility to do everything you can to prevent them from getting in a dangerous situation to begin with. Okay, the A. This one, and I just want to add a little side note, personal experience. My husband and I have always been really great about restoring our guns responsibly, but until I joined Moms Demand Action and heard this Be Smart program, it never crossed my mind to think about this next step that I'm about to tell you about. And it's so incredibly important to incorporate this in your daily life, especially if you are a caregiver of children. So as we mentioned, there's approximately 4.6 million children in the US living in a household with at least one loaded unlocked gun. So that's why you need to ask about firearms in other homes your child visits. That's the A in SMART. Ask about unsecured guns in other homes. For the parents and caretakers in the room, there are, I'm sure, normal things that you would ask before allowing your child to go to a friend's house or another home. Some examples I can think of is potential allergies, if they have pets, if they have a pool on the property, if that's, secured to where they can't gain access to the pool without adult supervision, or if they're going anywhere, if they have the proper car seat, et cetera, et cetera. Those are just typical questions that you would ask before letting your child go somewhere to make sure that, they're safe and good. So asking about guns in the home should be as natural as asking about any other safety issue. So I know it can seem awkward at first. Try making it a part of your general safety conversation. You might try asking via email or text if you're uncomfortable at first. But just asking, hey, do you have guns in your home? If you do, are they locked up securely to where the kids can't get a hold of them while they're there? It's a very, very simple question and very important question. Okay, so moving on, let's talk about R, recognizing the role of guns and suicide. Access to a gun can mean the difference between life and death. We saw that in Mikey's story. As our children get older, you may need to consider taking another look at your storage methods. If you've been using a simple cable lock, you might want to think about getting a gun safe. We all know how curious children can be, and as they get older, they get more resourceful. So we need to act accordingly. Also, if you know your loved one is in distress, you might want to consider temporarily removing a gun from your home. Take this information into consideration. Most people who attempt suicide do not die unless they are using a gun. In fact, 90% of suicide attempts with a gun result in death, a much higher fatality rate than any other means of self-harm. This contributes to the fact that 40% of child suicides involve a gun. If you consider temporarily removing a gun from your home, how can you do that? Where can you bring it? That's a good question. Law enforcement may be willing to temporarily store your guns for you. Some licensed gun dealers and gun ranges may be willing to temporarily store the guns as well. Or you could temporarily store your guns in the home of a friend or a family member. But keep in mind, to manage risk for that friend or family member, you should lock any guns that you transfer and not provide the key or the code. Okay, The National Youth Survey conducted by the CDC shows that 17% of high school students surveyed had seriously considered attempting suicide within the last year. One study showed that 41% of adolescents in gun-owning households report having easy access to the guns in their home. As we discussed earlier, research shows that secure firearm storage is associated with a decreased risk of child firearm suicide. We have plenty of resources, and here on this slide, you can see we've got a couple of phone number resources you can reach out to for anyone that facts and resources on child firearm suicide, and that includes the suicide prevention hotline. So T is the last letter. T stands for tell. Tell your peers about Be Smart. That's really what the real power behind Be Smart is to sharing the message. We've heard from people that because Be Smart, they know to ask about the presence of guns before their children go into other people's homes, that they have talked to family members about guns in the homes, when they recognize the role of guns in suicide, and that gun owners are modeling responsible behavior as the direct result of Be Smart. It's important that people who own and work with guns are part of this conversation. Research shows that law enforcement, the military, and hunting and outdoor groups are particularly effective at communicating secure storage practices. So think about who you want to tell to Be Smart today. So let's just go through the acronym again one more time. S is for secure all guns in your homes and vehicles. M is to model responsible behavior. A is for ask about unsecured guns in other homes. R is for recognize the role of guns in suicide. And T, tell your peers to be smart. So thank you for spending your time here today. That's the end of the Be Smart presentation, but I am going to talk a little bit about domestic violence next. But I do want to just say, feel free to speak to me if you have any questions about this specific presentation or about just gun safety in general. If anyone is interested in sharing this presentation with any other friends or groups, community groups, church, Sunday school classes, whatever you want, your mommy, daddy, or mommy, baby date group, whatever, we would be happy to share this presentation with whoever wants to hear it. So I do quickly want to talk just a little bit about domestic violence and how guns intersect with that. Get my notes here. So this is from a presentation that our group did statewide back in October, and it's just kind of showing you the gun sales over the span of time in the last 20 years, and you can notice there are some pretty big peaks, big spikes in gun purchases. Especially related to, obviously, last year, the beginning of the pandemic. So there was a huge spike in gun sales. So that just means statistically speaking, that just means there's more unsecured guns in homes than there was before. So this is obviously an issue. I do want to talk specifically about why the rise in domestic violence and suicides are directly connected to the gun violence prevention movement. Intimate partner violence and gun violence in the U.S. are inextricably linked. Every month, an average of 52 women are shot and killed by an intimate partner. Nearly 1 million women alive today have reported being shot or shot at by an intimate partner, and 4.5 million women have reported being threatened with a gun. In more than half of the mass shootings over the past decade, the perpetrator shot a current or former intimate partner or family member as part of the rampage. The ripple effects of firearms in the hands of an abuser extend far beyond the intimate relationship, affecting the children that witness it or live with it, and the family members and coworkers and law enforcement officers who respond to it. While the deadly intersection of guns and intimate partner violence affects all women. It has a disproportionate impact on Black, American Indian, Alaska Native, and Hispanic women. Also, having access to a gun makes it 5 times more likely that an abusive partner will kill his female victim. And as for suicide, over the past decade, the U.S. firearm suicide rate has increased by 19%. Again, this was information from this past October. I fear what the statistics are going to be after this last year. I hope it doesn't go up, but you all are very familiar, I'm sure, with how stressful this past year was with the pandemic. So gun suicide is a major problem in our country. It actually makes up 2/3 of all gun deaths. So when Moms Demand Action talks about gun violence prevention, we're not just talking about these mass shootings that you see on the news, which are horrible. But we're talking about unintentional shootings as well. We're talking about domestic violence shootings as well. And we're also talking about suicide. What can we do to prevent all of these violent actions involving guns? Half of all suicide, and the firearms do make up half of all suicide attempts, which is, if you remember the statistic from earlier, 90% people that attempt suicide by gun are fatal. Just a couple more things I want to talk about, and then I will let you go. Let's see. So that was a little bit about domestic violence, but a lot of this is national information, but I think a little bit of information might be specific to Tennessee here. So again, this is from October, so please ignore the October part. So I do want to mention gun-related domestic violence is a deadly crisis facing women and families in the U.S. due to weak gun laws that make it easy for domestic abusers to access guns. Over half of the women killed by an intimate partner are killed with a gun, and existing loopholes in federal and state law allow access to guns by abusive partners and stalkers, often with deadly results. And this is, I'm not going to touch too much on the political aspect, but when it comes to the Be Smart program, safe storage is excellent. And obviously the statistics I was telling you about earlier drastically reduces the risk of children getting harmed or killed by guns. But unfortunately, a lot of the domestic violence issues, the solutions are going to be more towards the legislative side. Obviously, safe storage is safer for everyone, including adults. But domestic violence is a whole different issue. And a lot of these problems can only be solved, or at least attempted to be solved, with better legislation. So the evidence is clear that common sense laws keep guns out of the hands of abusive partners and reduce gun violence and domestic violence. So not only are there 52 women in the US shot and killed by an intimate partner every month on average, but nearly 1 million women alive today have been shot or shot at by an intimate partner, and millions have been threatened with a gun. So I'm going to show you this number here. This is something specific to Tennessee. In Tennessee, from 2014 to 2018, there were 134 women that were fatally shot by an intimate partner. And that represented 79% of all intimate partner gun homicides in the state. So the vast majority of the domestic intimate partner gun homicides the women are the victims. So I noticed a lot of not fun things to hear talk about, but if it's not talked about, then we can't fix the problems. I did want to end on this very last slide here and just show or say that if you identify as a gun violence survivor, or if you know someone that does, we do have resources with our organization to get you connected with some help. It's all free, of course. Obviously we can get you connected with a community of other survivors. It always helps to have someone to be able to share your story with that can understand what you're going through. So the fastest and easiest way to get connected with that is to just text the word survivor to 64433. To define what it means to be a survivor, you may have lost a loved one by gun violence, or you yourself have been threatened or harmed by gun violence, or you know someone that took their own life by a gun as well. So there are just unfortunately a lot of different ways that Americans are affected by gun violence here. And as you can see with the statistic, about 58% of Americans have reported that they or someone they care for has experienced it. So yeah, that is all I've got for you. If anybody has any questions, please feel free to, of course, ask, and I will do my best to answer.
Thank you so much, Jessie.
Yeah.
You know, even though, as you mentioned, these are hard topics to talk about and think about, I think, you know, arming ourselves with this information and these resources is really beneficial right now. It's hard to escape the topic, right? I mean, we're hearing recently, even more than usual, you know, these tragedies that are occurring related to guns in the nation. So any questions or comments for Jessie? Feel free to, you know, unmute yourself. Feel free to turn your camera on or leave it off, whatever you prefer.
Hey, Jessie. My name is Sarah Metzner. I'm going to turn my camera on just for a second. Let me move my... Hey, thank you so much for, thank you so much for the information, Jessie. It was a great presentation, although it was, you know, it's always hard to listen to all the statistics and it's a little disheartening sometimes, but I just powered through because I wanted the information. But I work with childcare providers and childcare agencies. And what our agency does is we train early childhood providers in lots of different areas. But I know specifically that licensed childcare providers, one of the things that they need as part of their licensing requirements is parent engagement opportunities. They have to offer parent training so many times a year to fulfill some of these requirements that they have. This information would be really, really great. So I think to share not only with childcare providers, so they could have information out for parents, because this information is so important for parents, children any ages. You know, when you talked about the toddlers, that was like that just like broke my heart completely. But I think it's so important. So if you would mind sharing this information, I know that it was listed in the chat box. There was some information available. So any of the materials, that would be great to send out to childcare agencies in our service area. Now we cover 15 counties for our service area, but TECTA is statewide, so we could share with our other TECTA sites as well. But that would be great to be able to share with some of our providers. So thank you so much.
Yeah, Sarah, if it's possible to maybe get your email address.
Yeah, I'll put it in the chat box right now.
Okay, we have a ton of like postcards that have the Be Smart information on it that are just quick and easy handouts that we have. We have brochures. Obviously, we have all kinds of unlimited PDFs we could email you, but if it would be beneficial to have the physical cards to hand out and things like that, we'd be more than happy to get you all hooked up with that stuff.
Yeah, that would be so great. That'd be really great. And we have when we used to be in our previous normal, and we would have informational tables at community events. We'd always bring out community information from other agencies too, just to have out. So eventually, hopefully, knock on wood, we'll get back to that and we can share some of this information. that'd be really helpful too. And when we go out to see providers, like we do site visits now, we can't do that very often, but we would bring bags of materials like a children's book, TECTA information, and then some other community resources. So that would be great to take out to them too, when we can go back and do some of those.
Yeah, yes, we would love to do that. I will, if it's okay with you, connect with you offline or
fantastic
email, and maybe get all that coordinated.
That would be great. Thanks.
And if anyone else does know of anyone that could benefit from this information, the door is open for us to get resources to anyone in the community. One of our big success stories was a couple years ago. I guess it wasn't this past school year, but the year before, we were able to send home Be Smart postcards to every single child with their welcome back to school packet in Johnson City school system. And that was just huge. And that was kind of a big grand scale thing, but even like I even mentioned, some of our volunteers present with their Sunday school class, just a small or book study or book club or whatever. So, but any other organization at any point down the road, if you all find out, I'm going to put my email address in the chat box as well. If you all want to ever reach out to me with anything that I can do to help, especially getting this kind of resources out to the community, don't hesitate to reach out. Nope. Let me change that.
Well, and I put in the chat, we also, through our grant from Tennessee Department of Health for maternal mortality prevention, we have a supply of gun locks that we want to give out, for free to folks who need them. We're working to do that right now through the ETSU health clinics. Like Sarah said, I hope to be able to get back to doing that in community events, because we do like to try to reach out to folks in community events as well. So keep that in mind. Sorry, my phone's dinging. We also have another new grant that could allow us to purchase more gun locks if needed. And I've been emailing with Jesse for recommendations about how to get those out. It's interesting. We've given some out in our pediatric clinic for several years, and we were using a screening question. It's just on a piece of paper with some other screening questions that our nurses give out at well-child visits, and to find out if a family was interested in a free gun lock. And we've had very few families express that interest, many fewer than I would expect. So we're actually changing tactics now, thinking maybe people don't want to put that down on a piece of paper for their pediatrician, and are just going to more actively try to offer them and normalize them. Our social worker in clinic is going to try to do that. I had one question for you, Jesse, and then we definitely have time for other questions and comments. But I was in a meeting this weekend with pediatricians across the country with the American Academy of Pediatrics, and we were talking about adolescent suicide prevention and how we could do more to help with that. And one of the pediatricians from another state mentioned that often when she tries to talk about gun safety and locking up guns in the context of, a teenager who's suicidal, tries to have that conversation with the family, she meets with resistance, that and that's obviously frustrating for her. But I wondered, again, that's something that I've encountered in clinic, just resistance. I like the way you set up the expectations for your talk, that we want to put politics aside. I just wondered if you had any other recommendations, as we try to talk to others about Be Smart and gun safety, for responding to resistance, again, because it is a political topic.
It definitely is. And we do, back pre-COVID, like you all were talking about, we did all kinds of community events as well. And so imagine setting up a table at, Blue Plum with a Moms Demand Action banner, and you get some some people that they've made their mind up about what we're about before they even walk up and talk to us. But once we engage in the conversation, some progress a lot of times is made. So I guess it depends on what kind of resistance it is, like what their response is. I have learned, and this is just me speaking from personal experience, this is not really on behalf of the official Moms Demand Action organization, but I've learned that, and I do realize I'm also a little uniquely qualified to do this because I am a gun owner. I'm also a gun violence survivor. My husband is a gun violence survivor. He's a veteran. Like, I check all the boxes for the people that are very pro Second Amendment. Not that we're against the Second Amendment, we're not, but we are pro gun safety. So really just making that, like, just listening to what their pushback is, and trying to find a way to explain or express how they can, let me just give an example. So a lot of pushback that I would get in local events would be, well, the gun doesn't do me any good if it's in the safe, right? I need it in my nightstand in case somebody breaks in and I need to access it quickly. And so my answer to that is always twofold. I always just say, well, you know, if that accessing the gun that quickly is that important, there are very small gun safes out there that are fingerprint recognition that you can have under your nightstand, and you'll get it out just as quickly, and you don't have to think about it. You just put your thumbprint on there and it opens. If that's really truly what your main concern is. Another thing that I always say is, you know, the most important part of engaging in a hypothetical situation like that is obviously being extremely well trained. If you're not well trained in handling a gun, it doesn't matter how close the gun is to you in a stressful situation, you're not going to be able to handle it in a safe manner. So training is, and repetitive training is really the best way to do that. But I know that's not really answering your question. It's just, what I always try to do when I have a conversation with somebody that pushes back is to just come to meet them where they're at, hear what they're saying, what their concern is, what their resistance is, and explain, you know, just how important it is to protect your loved ones, and how statistically much higher it is for an accident or suicide to occur rather than a break-in. So I know that's not really an easy answer, but it really just making those connections and letting people hear that you're coming to the table with out of safety and not out of, I want to take your guns away. So that's really the best answer I have. Unfortunately, with this kind of stuff, unless it hits home, a lot of people are gonna not want to listen to what being corrected on the ways that they've been doing it. So it's really the best I can suggest on it.
No, I think that's really helpful.
Yeah.
You know, just demonstrating that you're listening to what
and that I've learned is
on the ground.
We're here in this program with our organization, especially in Northeast Tennessee. We're in it for the long haul. The culture and the safety is not going to change if we give up the first time somebody resists and pushes back. So it's really just developing those relationships, cultivating the relationships, and showing through, showing that you're not there to condemn them for owning a gun. You just want it to be safe and just be consistent with it.
That's great advice. Thank you. Anybody else with questions or comments or even suggestions? Okay, well, thank you again, everyone, for joining us, and Jesse for being our speaker today. We appreciate you all, and I think Katie's putting up our our closing slide here with our Institute mission. We do seek to promote interprofessional and transdisciplinary collaboration to better understand and address the needs of children and families. Our next collaborative series meeting is on May 18th from 12 to 1. Dr. Joyce Troxler from the ETSU Department of Family Medicine and Addiction Medicine program will be our speaker. She's going to be talking about relapse prevention. There's our Institute website, and we do plan to send participants registered for today's series presentation a feedback survey. So look for that in your email. All right. Thanks, everybody, and have a good rest of the day.
Thank you.
Thank you.